With just a little less than a week to go until the release of Ironheart by both Marvel Studios and the Walt Disney Company, the press tour so far has been nothing more than a disaster. We know that it has been a colossal failure for Bob Iger and Kevin Feige, given that we have, of course, the Ironheart actress Dominque Thorne confirming several things about the show that is already beginning to backfire, not just on Disney, but also on Marvel, and how a lot of Marvel fans are really beginning to realize that this is basically the Marvel version of the BACKLASH series and what was done by Lucasfilm/Star Wars back in June of 2024. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, we already know that drag was confirmed to actually be shoehorned into a series like this. By the way, this is going to be a 6-episode series. All 3 episodes, the first half of the show, I should say, will debut on June 24th. And that should be the first major red flag that Disney really has no confidence in this show. The fact that they are slashing half the entire series and putting it out all in one day is a major telltale that they really have zero confidence in this thing. But let's get on to this. Now, what's interesting about Dominque Thorne, we know that she is the lead in the actual series. She is the one that plays Riri Williams, aka Ironheart, and how they're going on this constant trope about getting past Tony Stark, getting past Iron Man, and really focusing on diversity this, equity that. Well, it just got worse than all of that. Let's get into this, shall we? Now, with the Walt Disney Company and Marvel in a state of panic over their series Ironheart and its potential impact on the Fantastic Four, one major development going on now involves Ironheart actress Dominque Thorne, who plays Riri, who went against Marvel fans to defend the typical Disney agenda, where Thorne, of course, was actually driven by all of this, and into the series ahead of its 3-episode premiere on June 24th. Now, Thorne delivered the following. When you really examine the series, it not only celebrates the next generation after Tony Stark and who the next Iron Man should be, but it also is a series that respects diversity, equity, and inclusion, and LGBTQ rights. What's so powerful about this series is that we also celebrate drag, and you are just going to see so many diversified characters in this show, some of which are played by those that come from the LGBTQ community. Getting to work on this show was a very warm welcome because of how inclusive it was, and it takes a lot of courage to stand up against toxic fandoms, and how Marvel needs to improve in that department when it comes to the fans. This is by far our most diversified Marvel series on Disney+, yet, and it should be respected as such, we do this not to divide people, but to bring people together, and to bring fans together. And I think Marvel fans just get it too twisted and on what we are trying to achieve and what we are trying to do for a show like this, featuring Riri Williams. Sometimes I think you have to just roll with the punches and accept that there will always be people out there that will be against all of these wonderful things that bring people together. Kevin Feige personally informed me that this is the series that finally allows fans to understand that it is no longer Iron Man's story or Tony Stark's story. It's Riri's, and we are going to show you exactly what we mean by that. You can't always latch onto the same heroes over and over again. It gets boring. But getting this opportunity to play a strong and powerful female character that doesn't come from a place of privilege, I thought was very motivating, not just for the character development, but as far as an actress like myself who was always trying to better myself in that area. When you look at criticism more often than not, that tends to be nothing more than just hype, and we are asking everyone to just take part in this wonderful new journey that is Ironheart. Now guys, let me say one thing about Ironheart. This is based on a comic that was created just in 2016, a comic that was cancelled, by the way, a comic that really held no demand back then, almost 10 years ago, and here you have Ironheart as a show in 2025, a show that could have very well been better off as a War Machine series. I think that would have been very much welcomed by the fans. I think that we all deserve something like that, but at the end of the day, look, you're not really going to have a lot of Marvel fans in support of you when you're really focusing on Riri Williams as the sole character to get past Tony Stark, to get past Iron Man, And the fact that they're trying to really just go on that constant trope about diversity, equity, and inclusion, LGBTQ rights, and how drag queens will be in this story, and how it's going to have a lot of drag in it, it's not working. In fact, this is actually setting itself up to be worse than the Acolyte series. If not worse, it'll be right on par with that show and what they did back in June of 2024. Again, I kind of find it very ironic that both the Acolyte and Ironheart debuted in June. Alright? But what's interesting about this is the fact that we have Marvel/Disney trying to do whatever they can to just get past the show, while at the same exact time, they are doubling down on all of their nonsense, so it's very hypocritical in nature. At one point, Bob Iger just wants to get the show all done and over with, but on another point, they're really doubling down on the typical Disney messaging, the typical Disney agenda, hence why the press tour for this series is a colossal failure. Now, moving onwards, she goes on to actually allude further, you are going to see why both Riri and her role as Ironheart holds this valuable depth that outperforms Tony's, because she really comes from a more challenging world. And her struggles go beyond what Tony had to go through in the first film. Riri is the epitome of character development that a woman deserves in a story like this that celebrates diversity, inclusion, and LGBTQ. It's just such a rewarding experience to be a part of something so big and something that should gain the recognition that it deserves. Ironheart is by far our most revolutionary story for Disney+. And again, I mean, that's exactly why it's driving away Marvel fans. Nobody was ever asking for a series about Riri Williams, let alone a show about Ironheart and a show focusing on all the typical Disney agendas. Now look, are people going to be entertained about how much of a flop this show will be? For sure. I think that's going to be one side of it. But on the other end, I think people would have much rather to have something very entertaining to drop, truly, during this month of 2025. They could have done a War Machine series, they could have done anything like that that would have been far more respected by fans than a show like this based on a comic less than 10 years ago that was cancelled. So again, we know that Tony Stark / Iron Man, very respected character, who had, you know, a moment of his time in Endgame where he actually, you know, sacrificed himself, and basically, a lot of people just want to see Iron Man come back. I think at the end of the day, people want to see Iron Man again. Not everyone was on board when Iron Man sacrificed himself in Endgame, because after that, it has been a constant downward spiral when it comes to what Marvel has been putting out there in the films and in the television shows, right? But overall, I would love to hear what everyone has to say about Dominque Thorne really defending all of this nonsense and really going against the fans. And look, we know that this could very well set itself up to be worse than the Acolyte series. Now, do I think it's going to be worse than the Acolyte? Who knows? We know that the Acolyte really got a lot of backlash, and I mean a lot of backlash. But again, that's Star Wars. You know, Star Wars is different than Marvel. But you're seeing similar themes here, right? You're seeing similar patterns happening at the same exact time between the Acolyte and Ironheart. Overall, I would love to hear what everyone has to say about all this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I'll catch you guys later.